for coronavirus. Kind of a remarkable speech in many ways. Biden wished President Trump and the First Lady well. He noted he had been tested twice this morning for the virus and was negative before being cleared to travel. He, of course, had been exposed to the virus by President Trump and members of the Trump team, but no mention of that. The high road completely for Joe Biden. CNN Jessica Dean in Grand Rapids. And Jessica, in addition to the fact that the president, Vice President, the high road and did not criticize Trump well, two other things struck. One, he almost entirely economic message, and two, and perhaps louder than any time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he did. He was wearing a mask. Jill Biden was wearing her in her travels to New Hampshire as well. We heard him confirm that he took two tests earlier today, one in Delaware, one with House doctor, and saying this is not politics. Instead, this is a reminder that we have to take this virus seriously. And Trump's response to the coronavirus has been the centerpiece of Biden's campaign. It all started happening back in February and March, and it has been come back to again and again. So we heard him about that mask mandate that he's talked about before. We heard about the need for a testing program, but he definitely wishing the president and the First Family well, saying that the families who are battling really trying to draw it back to America. You heard how close to that speech. It's something we hear from him on the campaign trail. He doesn't want the president for all Americans.
It's really remarkable. I mean, if anybody could President Trump this morning, it would be Joe's family, and yet not a word, a negative word. Dean really appreciated. Sanjay, let's go back on his condition. Obviously, again, and we all wish him well. This morning, he experimental drug, this antibiotic measure. Doctor says he's fatigued. How serious do you think this is for Trump? Sanjay.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Oh, I can, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. How serious is the president?
Okay. Well, we're having to sort of, read into this a bit, Jake, because I still feel like there's a level of opaqueness that is coming from these statements. It's not still clear to me, but I think there is a heightened level of concern that I'm reading now, just even over the last few hours, as we're hearing more about the president's symptoms. They say it was a precautionary measure to give this experimental therapy. But they did give this antibody therapy, this monoclonal antibody therapy from Regeneron at the highest dose. It's still experimental. I mean, the only data that we have around this is 275 patients in that early trial. So it is something that we're understanding was probably given under compassionate use. The president's not part of a trial, obviously, for this. So, these things sort of read into a level of concern here. How is he being monitored at the White House? Are his symptoms, are they stable? Are they worsening in any way? Because if they are, and again, I'll reiterate that, the odds are very much on his side in terms of how he will do through all this. But in terms of the immediate care that the White House medical team needs to be thinking about, I think the decision tree is, does he need to be in a hospital at this point? Because the White House medical unit can do a lot of things, but we're talking about experimental therapies, things that are brand new. You may need more resources to be able to just manage all this. So, we'll see. I think that there is, I'm reading a heightened level of concern here, Jake.
You think that there's a heightened level of concern based on the experimental therapy alone?
And divulging the new symptoms, things like that. First he was fine. Now the fever all day. They didn't tell us that in the beginning. The fatigue. It's always, the language is always, it's the same sort of language that you hear when people are, not trying to panic people, whatever, just sort of starting to unfurl these details at you. And I get it. You don't want to shock people, but I hope that with regard to this, the key is to make sure that nothing is getting missed with the president and that he is in the right place for any care that he might need. And he might be fine at the White House. But again, just having covered the story for so long, listening to these press conferences so carefully, reading these memorandums over and over again, and then going back and saying, oh, this is what they meant by that, even though they didn't say it, I am sensing a level of concern that's increasing, Jake.
And Abby, I mean, the president and his team have shown a wanton disregard for human life by as soon as they found out that Hope Hicks was infected and the president had close contact with her, by going to New Jersey and exposing other people to it. And God, I hope that other people on Air Force One that went to and from the debate with him, especially Alice Johnson, whom the president pardoned, I hope they are fine, and I hope they're getting checked out. This is really, I mean, in addition to the shock of the president having this virus and how much everybody, just as fellow Americans, are concerned about him, this is really bad, the behavior of the White House and the president as a political matter. It really demonstrates something quite selfish.
Yeah, there is no question about it. This is such a serious situation. So many people have been put in danger in the last few days. It really just defies logic. People who work at the White House, reporters, Secret Service agents, people who cleaned the White House, people who were on the plane as guests of the president, people in that room at the debate earlier this week because of the refusal of many in the Trump entourage to wear masks in a place where that was one of the requirements for being there. There is no question about it that this is a serious crisis facing this country right now. The president is sick with a potentially deadly virus. And it happened because the White House, the Trump campaign, and everyone around this president refuses to do the basic things that we know they should do to keep themselves and other people safe. And I don't think that there can be any overstatement of that. This is the president of the United States. Their job was to keep him safe, and they did not do that.
Ron, we only have about 20 seconds, but your thoughts on this historically?
Yeah, the polling has been unequivocal from the beginning that one of the things Americans most worry about is that President Trump is more interested in his own interests than the country's in handling the virus. And we just add how remarkable that speech was for Biden after a pretty lackluster performance at the debate. It really showed how laser focused he is on the idea that the shortest path back to the White House is winning those 3 Rust Belt states that Trump dislodged in 2016, and by doing so with an economic message aimed at blue-collar voters.
Yeah, and a nonpartisan one in some ways as well. I will see you on Sunday morning on State of the Union. Our coverage on CNN continues right now.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome to our viewers here in the United States and around the world. I'm Wolf Blitzer in the Situation Room. We're following breaking news. The most serious known medical threat to a sitting U.S. president in decades. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump both testing positive for the coronavirus. The White House physician just released new details about the president's current symptoms, which include fatigue and a fever. That, according to a source. We're also learning that the president is being treated with an experimental antibody cocktail as a precautionary measure. This is a big deal. The president's diagnosis is raising new concerns about a potential national security crisis and urgent questions right now over his health, the lack of transparency coming from the White House, the timeline of events that led to this moment, and the impact all of this could have on the presidential election, now just 1 month away. And there are also signs right now that the outbreak could stretch well beyond the president's inner circle. CNN has learned of additional cases at the White House. Multiple journalists and at least one staffer have been confirmed with coronavirus. Let's get straight to the center of the crisis. Our chief White House correspondent, Jim Acosta, is joining us. Jim, we, of course, wish the president, First Lady, everybody a speedy recovery. But these late-breaking developments are very, very worrisome.
It is very concerning, Wolf, and White House officials appear to be tweaking some of the language they're using to describe the president's condition, with one top aide now saying Mr. Trump has a moderate case of the coronavirus. We are told the president has a fever, and the White House doctor says Mr. Trump is fatigued and has been fatigued all day long. The White House physician also says he was given a single dose of an antibody cocktail as a preventive treatment earlier today. His case was described as mild by White House officials, so a change in his status from earlier in the day. Either way, this could be the most serious situation a president has faced in terms of his health in decades. After months of misleading Americans about the dangers posed by the coronavirus, President Trump is now a COVID-19 patient himself, along with the First Lady, as the global pandemic has penetrated the White House grounds.
It is a very moderate case. The president was kind of barking out orders for all of us, giving us tasks this morning to follow through. He's on the phone, so I have not seen him. I last spoke to him last evening. I have not talked to him today, but apparently he's doing just fine.
The president's illness forced him to cancel an appearance on a White House conference call on COVID-19's impact on senior citizens, prompting Vice President Mike Pence to fill in.
Pleased to report President Trump and the First Lady are both well at this time. They will remain at the White House while they convalesce.
In addition to the president and First Lady, top aide Hope Hicks, as well as another West Wing staffer, have tested positive, as have multiple members of the White House press corps. As administration officials do contact tracing to track the spread, there is some focus on last Saturday's event at the White House, where the president announced his pick for the Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett. Utah GOP Senator Mike Lee and the president of Notre Dame, who were in attendance that day, have also come back positive. Barrett, who was previously diagnosed with the virus over the summer, tested negative this week. Over the last week, the president stayed busy taking part in his debate with Joe Biden and holding a rally in Minnesota. Then on Thursday, Mr. Trump attended a fundraiser at his golf club in New Jersey. White House officials say they discovered Hicks was positive just before boarding Marine One for the fundraiser.
In terms of Hope Hicks, we discovered that right as the Marine One was taking off yesterday. We actually pulled some of the people that had been traveling in close contact.
The press secretary defended Mr. Trump's decision to continue on with the trip to New Jersey.
It was deemed safe for the president to go. He socially distanced. White House operations made the assessment it was safe for the president in consultation with others.
Even after the president's sudden illness, top officials weren't wearing masks around the White House, including controversial Dr. Scott Atlas and Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, who's tested negative. Why aren't you wearing a mask right now?
Yeah, so I've obviously been tested, even with a lot of the mitigating factors, Jim. What you have is a virus that is contagious, that certainly continues to be, regardless of whatever protocol we have, that it has the ability to affect everybody.
Members of the president's debate prep team weren't wearing masks either.
No one was wearing masks in the room when we were prepping the president during that period of time. The group was about 5 or 6 people in total.
The president has spent months brushing off concerns about the virus, telling reporters he wasn't concerned about catching it.
I'm more concerned about how close you are, to be honest.
Sorry about that.
Because you know why? I'm on a stage that's very far away. And so I'm not at all concerned.
And that the virus would miraculously vanish.
Looks like by April, in theory, when it gets a little warmer, it miraculously goes away. I hope that's true.
And there were the strange antiviral remedies.
And then I see the disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning?
Including his experimenting with taking hydroxychloroquine as a preventive measure.
I'm taking it, hydroxychloroquine.
When?
Right now, yeah. A couple of weeks ago, I started taking it. Because I think it's good. I've heard a lot of good stories.
The White House won't confirm that he's using that unproven medication now.
Well, I'm not going to get into any particular treatment that he may or may not have. He's in the residence now, and in true fashion, he's probably critiquing the way that I'm answering these questions.
And the president's illness has blown a hole into his campaign schedule. Campaign officials say they're now in the process of either canceling Mr. Trump's upcoming rallies or shifting to online events. No word whether the president and Joe Biden will meet as scheduled at their next debate in less than 2 weeks. And administration officials say Vice President Mike Pence tested negative for the virus and that he is in good health. That is an indication that he'll participate in his debate with Kamala Harris next week. But Wolf, I have to tell you, it is mind-boggling that throughout the day we have seen White House officials not wearing their masks even after the president came down with the coronavirus. Wolf.
Mind-boggling it is. All right, Jim Acosta, we're going to get back to you. I know there are late-breaking developments over there. Stand by. I want to bring in CNN's MJ Lee right now for the latest developments out of the Biden campaign. MJ, the former vice president, he's where you are in Michigan for this campaign event after both he and his wife fortunately tested negative for the virus this morning. What else What else are they saying? These are very, very dramatic moments.
They are, Wolf, and we just saw Joe Biden speak in Michigan. This was a trip that was actually delayed by several hours this morning as he waited for that negative COVID test, and he actually just said he took 2 tests and they both came back negative. This was a speech that was initially slated to be about the economy, but right off the top, we heard Joe Biden talk about Trump's condition and also issue a warning for the country. Here he is.
My wife Jill and I prayed that they'll make a quick and full recovery. This is not a matter of politics. It's a bracing reminder to all of us that we have to take this virus seriously. We can save 100,000 lives in the next 100 days, according to the head of the CDC, if everyone wears a mask in public. So be patriotic. It's not about being a tough guy. It's about doing your part. Wearing a mask is not only going to protect you, but it also protects those around you. Your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, husband, wife, neighbor, coworker. Don't just do it for yourself. Do it for the people you love, the people you work with.
And this comes 3 days after Biden shared a debate stage with the president. And yes, their 2 podiums, as you recall, were socially distanced. They were well over 6 feet apart. They were actually 12 feet apart, we are told. But keep in mind, they were indoors. This was a debate that had an audience, and some audience members, as we saw that night, were not wearing masks, including some members of Donald Trump's family. So clearly the Biden campaign determined that there was a concern for exposure, and so that's why they took the measure of making sure that he was tested twice this morning. And again, they both came back negative. Wolf.
Yeah, the president's 74 years old. The former vice president is 77 years old. MJ, the way these 2 candidates have behaved while campaigning during this pandemic couldn't be more different, right?
You really cannot emphasize that enough. You know, the president, as we have talked about a lot, he has consistently understated the seriousness of the virus. When he is out on the campaign trail with his own conduct, he does not sort of follow the guidelines that have come out from doctors and public health officials. You know, we rarely see him wearing a mask. We often see him not socially distanced. And we also have seen him hold these campaign rallies, sometimes indoors. Whereas for the Biden campaign, they have very much strictly adhere to these kinds of rules. When you go to a Biden event as a reporter, you are often sitting in a chair that is marked by a big circle around you. That is to make sure the campaign working to make sure that even the reporters are socially distanced. And of course, we saw Biden just today. His entire speech was given with him wearing a mask. And I have to tell you, Wolf, one moment from this week's debate that I've been thinking about a lot is the president mocking Joe Biden on stage for frequently wearing a mask. It is very difficult now to not think about those comments in a different light. Wolf.
All right, MJ, stand by. We're going to be getting back to you. I want to bring in our analysts and our experts to assess what's going on. And Dr. Sanjay Gupta, of course, is with us. We're getting these new details about the president's symptoms and treatments. We saw this memo that the president's personal physician, Dr. Sean Conley, sent out. This is all public, saying that he is fatigued, does have fever, and he is taking this experimental treatment. Hasn't even been approved yet, even for emergency use authorization. Tell us about that. And what does that say to you?
Well, you know, Wolf, I think if you're starting to put all this together, and I've been, hearing these reports from early this morning. First, we heard he was doing well. That was the first thing, really kind of trying to tamp down any concerns. Then it was the language sort of changed, saying he's having mild symptoms. As you point out, you're now hearing that he's had a fever really since the morning, feeling fatigued. Someone even described it, Jim Acosta said someone described it to him as moderate symptoms. And then on top of that, as you point out, Wolf, this Regeneron experimental therapy, which is in very early trial still, 275 patients in that trial, point being that it's very early experimental therapy. He got the highest dose of that, probably under a compassionate use order as well. So, Wolf, there's a concern here. He's 74 years old. He has vulnerabilities because of pre-existing conditions. He's symptomatic. If he's having any trouble at all, if he's starting to develop any trouble at all with breathing or chest pain or becoming worse in terms of fatigue or confusion or anything, I think the decision that the White House medical team is going to have to be is where should the president be for his care? The White House medical unit's pretty extensive, as you well know, Wolf, but they're not an intensive care unit. They don't have advanced imaging. There's many things they lack. So I think that's, I think they're telegraphing to us, Wolf, at this point, that there is a heightened level of concern that has been increasing throughout the day here.
Yeah, and if you read between the lines in this memo that the president's personal White House physician released, he goes through, in addition to the polyclonal antibodies, this Regeneron antibody cocktail that is now out there, even though it hasn't been formally approved. The president's taking some other vitamins, zinc, vitamin D, melatonin, daily aspirin. He's not taking some other treatments potentially that are out there. What does that say to you? Why did he pick this one, or at least his physicians pick this Regeneron polyclonal antibody cocktail?
Well, you know, we have to speculate at this point because they're not telling us much in terms of what the precise symptoms or the precise reasons why they're choosing something like this. The only other two things really out there would be remdesivir medication and then steroids known as dexamethasone. That's really more for people who are, you know, severely or critically ill, the steroids. Remdesivir is oftentimes given to people who are starting to have difficulties with their blood oxygenation. Again, these are all, you know, very early therapies. The monoclonal antibody doesn't even have emergency use authorization, but from what we know of it, Wolf, and we had a conversation with the founder last week, you remember, it can be given to people earlier in the course of disease. What it's basically doing is giving someone antibodies. When you're exposed to a virus like this, eventually the body will make antibodies and help fight it. But if that's not happening quickly enough, or there's some concern because of someone's pre-existing conditions or their vulnerabilities, you may try and provide the antibodies earlier in the course of illness. That's what he's received. We know he received the highest dose of this particular medication. It's, again, very experimental in that there's only really data that's out there. We haven't even seen that data on 275 patients, Wolf. So if you're doing that, you're making that decision, you're applying for this under compassionate use, what that says to me is that there's concern. And I think the next decision tree is, where does the president need to be to make sure he's getting the optimal care and management of this disease?
Yeah, that's very significant in this memo. Let's bring in Dr. Wen. She's also an expert in this area. They say the doctor, the president's White House physician, says he completed the infusion without incident, receiving, as Sanjay says, a single 8-gram dose of this Regeneron antibody cocktail. Dr. Wen, what does that say to you?
Well, it sounds like he received this treatment and did not have any of the side effects that that it's possible to have with this treatment. But I agree with Sanjay. I would want to know a bit more about how the president is doing. We don't have, for example, as far as I know, his vital signs. We don't know how his oxygenation is doing. They say that he has a fever, but what is the temperature? And I'm actually quite concerned about the fact that the president has a fever, because fever is a relatively later sign. It's not something that you see at the very beginning of an illness typically. And so it raises the question of how long he could have had coronavirus and how long he could possibly have been infecting other people.
Dr. Wen, I want to go back to Sanjay. Sanjay, we're getting some major, very disturbing breaking news right now. The White House press pool is now informing all of the major news organizations that the president will be heading over to the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center for treatment, will be leaving the White House to head over there for treatment. Clearly, at least from my analysis, and I'm not a doctor like you are, that would suggest this is a much more serious case of coronavirus than if he simply could have stayed at the White House residence and dealt with it there.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a big development, and you know, I think that they've been sort of, in some ways, telegraphing this, being very opaque about it. But there is now a obviously increased level of worry about the president, his health. As Lena was just saying, I don't know what specifically is triggering this. If we know the sorts of things that typically require hospitalization, if someone's having difficulty breathing, if they're having any kind of chest pain, if their symptoms are just, you know, progressively worsening, those are all concerns. But Wolf, you know, I got to tell you, I've been reporting on this since 1 o'clock this morning. I think that this is an important call, and it's a right call. I think that, you know, having the president and frankly any patient of his age with his vulnerabilities and now with these progressive symptoms, being in the hospital, if possible, is the right thing to do here. And it sounds like that's what they're going to do. I imagine they're going to fly him over there. They have capabilities at Walter Reed that they simply don't have at the White House Medical Unit. White House Medical Unit's extensive, but they don't have intensive care capabilities. They don't have advanced imaging capabilities. So this is, it's unsettling, obviously, to think that the president is now likely going to be rapidly transported to the hospital. But this is what's necessary, clearly. And I think it's sort of been building to this over the last few hours, Wolf.
And as you know, Sanjay, and as I know, and I've been there, there's a presidential suite at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center that's just outside Washington in Bethesda, Maryland. We're now told by a spokesperson over at the White House that the president will be working from offices there at Walter Reed over the next few days. Our Jeremy Diamond is already over at Walter Reed in Bethesda for us. Jeremy, tell us what you're hearing over there. What are you seeing? I suspect fairly soon we'll probably see the president heading over aboard Marine One, taking off from the south lawn of the White House, making a very brief flight over to Walter Reed in Bethesda.
That's right, Wolf, and this is a major development here. I mean, listen, we have watched the evolution of this from last night, early this morning, when we learned that the president had indeed tested positive for coronavirus. This morning, the White House and the White House doctor initially describing this as a very mild case of coronavirus, saying that he was having moderate symptoms. We even heard the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, say that the president was very enthusiastic and had high energy levels. And then came this letter from the White House physician, Dr. Sean Conley, this afternoon, saying that the president had been fatigued. So clearly the situation has been changing. The White House's description of the president's condition has also been changing, and now we are learning that the president is about to arrive at any moment now here at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center to be treated, not just for coming here for tests for a matter of hours, but that he is expected to stay here for several days. I want to read to you, Wolf, the statement that we have from the White House Press Secretary, Kayleigh McEnany. These are her words. She says, President Trump remains in good spirits, has mild symptoms, and has been working throughout the day. Out of an abundance of caution and at the recommendation of his physician and medical experts, the president will be working from the presidential offices at Walter Reed for the next few days. President Trump appreciates the outpouring of support for both he and the First Lady. And that is what you were referencing, Wolf, the fact that the president does have a presidential suite here at Walter Reed, that he is able to stay here for several days. But nonetheless, Wolf, this is the president of the United States, somebody who is 74 years old, is in a high-risk category, being admitted to the hospital for coronavirus. That is effectively what is happening here. The White House can describe this as the president working out of offices at Walter Reed, but ultimately he is being admitted to the hospital, Wolf, with coronavirus. This is a very concerning situation, Wolf.
Very concerning indeed. And Dr. Wen, they wouldn't be, we know the president, we know that he doesn't want to advertise that he has any medical conditions at all. For him to have agreed now to go over to Walter Reed and spend the next few days there, this is a serious development and underscores the problems he's facing as a result of being diagnosed with coronavirus.
That's right. We do know that most people who have coronavirus end up recovering. Some patients may never get any symptoms at all. Most people end up having mild symptoms. But for some individuals, and we don't know exactly why, but some individuals do end up having more severe symptoms. And one of the symptoms that we're the most concerned about is shortness of breath, because then you may not be getting enough oxygen. We know that for patients with coronavirus, their oxygen levels could get very low. At some point, they may need support to help them breathe. I'm not saying that that's what's going on with the president, but that is something that we anticipate happening for some of the patients who end up not doing very well. And we also have to remember that the median time between when somebody first starts developing symptoms to when they may need intensive care is 10 to 12 days. And often what we see in patients is that they seem to do well for about a week or so, and then their clinical course can still deteriorate after that. And so this careful monitoring that the president is having right now, I'm sure he'll get exceptional care at Walter Reed. That careful monitoring is going to be so critical in guiding what happens next.
And Sanjay, just tell us what the doctors can do at Walter Reed that they can't necessarily do at the White House, because we know there are pretty sophisticated medical equipment and treatments at the White House as well.
Yeah, Wolf, I think there's a couple things. One is there's more sort of advanced imaging if he were to need any kind of imaging that they can do at the White House, CT scans, things like that. I think, the larger issue at this point is that if you remember with Boris Johnson, for example, Wolf, as Lena said, it was 5 or 6 days after he was diagnosed. He was doing okay, but then he needed to go to the hospital and ended up spending 3 days in the intensive
Sanjay, hold on
care
for one
unit
moment.
over there.
I just want to point out what's going on. We have a shot of Marine One, the president's helicopter, landing on the south lawn of the White House right now. You can see it go down. At some point, the president, we assume, will walk out, board Marine One, and Marine One will make that very brief flight over to Bethesda, Maryland, the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. All right, stand by. Sanjay, continue your explanation. I just wanted to point out why we were showing Marine One landing on the south lawn.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. I think that it's part of this is mainly making sure that should the president need more advanced care, intensive unit care, for example, he will be in the hospital at that point. Rapidly transporting someone to the intensive care unit from home is obviously a more difficult proposition at that point. So having him in the hospital, being monitored there, he'll probably receive high flow oxygen, and basically have that proximity to more intensive care should he need it. I think that's probably what's happening. Also, these therapies, Wolf, even the monoclonal antibodies, they can be administered in an outpatient setting, but if there's other types of medications that he may be getting, sometimes you want to give those in a hospital where someone can be monitored when they're receiving these types of therapies. So they say this is an abundance of caution, which maybe it is, but there's obviously a level of concern here in having him in the hospital with all the various specialists there who can quickly address whatever symptoms and problems he may be developing, I think is the key. Again, I think this is unsettling, Wolf, to see the President of the United States being rapidly transported to a hospital for coronavirus. But it's the right call as well, because you need to get ahead of this. You can't wait too long. If someone starts to have troubles at home, can't get to the hospital, that's obviously a much bigger problem, Wolf.
You see the White House photographer there standing in front of Marine One, getting ready to take some pictures, I assume, of the president walking out on the south lawn and boarding Marine One on that brief helicopter ride over to the Walter Reed National Military. Jeremy Diamond is over there on the scene for us, over at the hospital. What else are you learning, Jeremy?
Well, Wolf, that is it at this point. We've seen Marine One landing on the South Lawn, as you said, which means that the president will be wheels up shortly for Walter Reed. But again, I think it is important to underscore just how significant this development is and what it must have taken, frankly, for President Trump to agree to be in the hospital for several days. I mean, this is the optics president, right, Wolf? This is the president who thinks about everything through the lens of how it is going to be perceived in the media. And so obviously he must have been aware that being admitted to the hospital for several days, that was going to be a development that was going to be concerning, that could potentially move markets, which is also perhaps, Wolf, why we are seeing this happen after market hours, and that this is ultimately something that is going to play into the minds of voters a month out from Election Day, Wolf, raising significant questions, of course, about the president's health. But I think, as Sanjay pointed out, we know that the earlier you catch this disease and the earlier you start aggressive treatment of it, the better the prognosis ultimately will be. And also notable, Wolf, is the fact that this president is sticking with, this experimental treatment that is showing very promising results, this antibody cocktail. He's going with that. He's going with what the doctors are recommending in this case. He is not going with hydroxychloroquine, which has been proven to be ineffective against the coronavirus, and which the president, of course, touted for months on end, and even took at one point as a prophylaxis or an attempt at a prophylaxis. Recent studies, of course, Wolf, have shown that it is not only ineffective at treating coronavirus, but that it's also ineffective as a prophylaxis in the way that the president took it. And so here we are, Wolf, months into this pandemic. The president is now going with what the doctors are saying, now that it has affected him directly, of course. But the question is, Wolf, what about the millions of Americans who have heard the president for months talking about hydroxychloroquine, downplaying the use of masks, perhaps the president's tune is also going to change now that we are seeing him actually change the decision-making that he is making now that he has been affected by this disease. Wolf?
All right, we're going to have you stand by. We're at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, Jeremy. Dana Bash is watching all of this unfold. There's a lot of history that's happening right now. Dana, set the scene for us as far as the historical significance of a president right now who's obviously facing a serious problem, coronavirus, and what's going on.
Yeah, Wolf, I mean, this has not happened in my adult lifetime. We are seeing the President of the United States in such poor health that he has to go to the hospital. Obviously, he has a deadly virus, a virus that has killed 200,000 plus of the citizens that he governs. And now it has hit him. And, you know, we certainly have seen and heard presidents that you have covered, that I've covered, who have had minor health issues. This is major. This is very, very serious for all the reasons that Sanjay and Dr. Wen were talking about, the signs that we are seeing from the doctors, note going out, explaining the experimental treatment that he is getting, and obviously the fact that he is now going to Walter Reed, which is an important step. The other thing is that we haven't seen the president since the White House told us at 1 o'clock this morning that he tested positive for coronavirus. And the iconic photo on the lawn of the White House that we're looking at right now for presidents since there were helicopters has been the president walking to Marine One and waving. What are we going to see? Are we going to see the president walk? Is this the reason that he is going to Walter Reed by helicopter? So he is the showman, as Jeremy was saying. He is the optics president. Is he going to make sure that Americans see him? We don't know, and that's what I'm going to be watching for, in addition to the obvious, to listen to the medical experts about what this means for the health of the President of the United States.
And Caitlin Collins is with us as well, our White House correspondent. Caitlin, we got this little memo from the White House physician, Dr. Sean Conley, but there really aren't a whole lot of specifics there. And we do know that the president, he's been silent, at least so far today. He isn't even tweeting, Caitlin. 16 hours ago was his last tweet when he posted, "Tonight, Flotus and I tested positive for COVID-19. We will begin our quarantine and recovery process immediately. We will get through this together." Since then, more than 16 hours, haven't heard from him, haven't seen him, and certainly it's significant that he's not even tweeting, Caitlin.
Yeah, Wolf, it is very uncharacteristic for the president to not be tweeting or anything. And of course, now we're waiting on him to come out to Marine One. It's been almost exactly 24 hours since we've seen the president. But what we really have got to talk about here is the fact that we have not heard from the president's doctor in a briefing, in a session where he could actually take questions from reporters. Yet they are taking the president to the hospital for the next several days without giving the reporters any more information than that. We have just gotten those two memos from Dr. Sean Conley, that's the president's physician, and then we got this statement from Kayleigh McEnany informing us that he's actually going to be spending several days there. It's not just going to be a quick trip like you've seen him take in the past. And Wolf, this has got to be a time when the White House has to be transparent about what exactly it is that's going on with the president's health, because all day long you have heard political aides insist that the president only had mild symptoms, that it was a moderate case is what Larry Kudlow called it, and then through reporting on our own we actually found out that the president had a fever. He had these other developments, that he was not feeling well either. So these are big questions that we still want to know the answers to, and yet the president is being taken to the hospital in just a few moments, and we have not heard from the White House physician yet and had a chance to ask him questions about the health of the president. And it is critical that the White House allows us to do that, because of course the American people need to know about the president's health, and this has been a White House that has shielded details about the president's visits to Walter Reed in the past, as they did last November when they claimed that he was getting a physical, and we never still to this day found out the real reason the president was there. So it is critical that the White House doctor does come out and give a briefing, but right now there are not any on the horizon that we know of. Wolf.
What do we know, Caitlin, about the Vice President, Mike Pence? Where is he right now, his whereabouts? Because all of this is significant if the president's heading to the hospital.
That's a question we've been trying to find out since we found out the president was going to Walter Reed a few moments ago. We have not heard back from the vice president's office, though earlier they did say that he had tested positive once again for coronavirus. It is something they tested him for again today after the developments overnight with Hope Hicks and with the president. And of course, this is critical because what is the vice president's role going to be while the president is in the hospital? Because they're saying that he's going to be working out of the suite. You know, Wolf, he's still in the hospital. Even if he's working while he's there, he is still being admitted to a hospital. So that is notable. And remember, there was the book recently that was published talking about when the president went to Walter Reed in 2019, and it said that the vice president's office was told he needed to be on standby. That is something that the vice president did not deny at the time. So we are waiting to see if this is another one of those situations where the vice president is once again told that he needs to be on standby, and how that affects his schedule. Because right now he is scheduled to leave, I believe, Sunday, maybe Monday, to go to Salt Lake City for a week of travel. So whether or not that changes based on the president leaving on a Friday afternoon, you have to think he's going to be there more than just through Saturday. And so we have a lot of details, Wolf, that we are still trying to figure out.
Yeah, he's supposed to have, as you say, a debate with the Democratic vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris next week as well. We'll see what happens. He did say, his doctors did say he tested negative, the vice president today when he was tested for coronavirus. I will point out that in this brief statement that was put out by the president's physician, in contrast to the president, Dr. Connolly said First Lady Melania Trump remains well with only a mild cough and headache, and the remainder of the first family are well and tested negative for coronavirus. I want to bring in the president's former national security advisor, John Bolton, right now, who's watching all of this together with all of us. Ambassador Bolton, thank you so much for joining us. What's your reaction to what we're seeing unfold right now?
Well, I have to say, listening with you to this, that it's unsettling that the president can't stay at the residence. I would say on the other side, this is not just any patient. This is the president. There's zero tolerance for risk here. I'm sure it's the prudent thing to do to go to Walter Reed. But nonetheless, this is not what the White House wants to see. There's no doubt about that.
Who would be notified? Would allies of the United States under normal circumstances be notified that the president of the United States is heading over to the hospital?
No, I don't think there would be any special need to notify the allies. There have been public statements from the White House. I'm sure that people are in consultation all the time. And it's not at a stage yet when that's required. But I do think the White House, the Defense Department, the State Department should have procedures in place here. This is obviously going to be somewhat more difficult to carry on business. The president won't be just a few hundred feet away at the residence. But there's no reason business can't go on, at least as far as we know.
Take us inside the National Security Council right now, and you were the president's national security advisor, worked with him on a day-to-day basis. Take us inside what they're seeing, because presumably some U.S. adversaries might see this as an opportunity to take advantage and do some things the U.S. doesn't necessarily want them to do.
Right. I would say right at the moment this is an all-hands-on-deck situation in terms of making sure that we're completely up to date on events around the world, even in conflicts that may not seem important in the United States, Armenia, Azerbaijan, the potential for those conflicts to escalate, or as you ask, for adversaries of the United States to try and take advantage not just of the lack of attention that sometimes happens in a presidential campaign, but because of the coronavirus complication, to make sure that we're fully aware of what's going on and able to react in real time. This is not a time for anybody to be on leave. That's complicated, of course, because we don't know what the testing status of people in the executive office of the president is. Most of the NSC staff is in the old executive office building across West Executive Avenue, but they're in the West Wing all the time on a normal basis. So this could complicate things from that perspective.
We do know, Ambassador Bolton, that we just learned, in fact, that the Vice President Mike Pence is over at his official Vice President's residence at the U.S. Naval Observatory, not too far away from the White House here in Washington, D.C. What's going through the vice president's mind right now as he watches all of this unfold from a national security perspective?
Well, I think his sense would certainly be heightened. I think the vice president knows exactly what the stakes are here. And I think it makes sense to have him at his residence rather than in the White House at this point. Whether there are protocols involving disinfection of the West Wing or not, I don't know. But until it's completely safe to bring him into the West Wing, I think being at the residence makes sense. And I think vice presidents are quite properly very reluctant to make it look like they're assuming any functions. We recall how awkward it was when President Reagan was shot and Secretary of State Haig went to the White House and said, "I'm in charge here," and so on, which was even more egregious than the vice president. So I think he's going to be very careful. But I think Vice President Pence is a prudent man. He is going to be thinking through what might happen in the next days, depending on the president's condition. And I think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, those of us old enough, you and me, we remember 1981 when the then President of the United States, President Reagan, was shot at the Washington Hilton Hotel, and he recovered. He was taken to George Washington University Hospital. He was in pretty serious, you remember at the time, Ambassador Bolton, he was in very serious shape, but he did survive, fortunately came through, and all of us are hoping clearly for the best for President Trump and the First Lady. In fact, everyone who's suffering from coronavirus right now. Ambassador Bolton, thank you so much for joining us. We'll continue this conversation. I want to bring in our special correspondent, Jamie Gangel, who's watching all of this unfold right now. Jamie, this is obviously a disturbing development. The president about to board. You see the live picture coming in from the south lawn of the White House. Marine One. It's not every day we see a president boarding Marine One, and he'll be boarding fairly soon, we're told, and then making that brief flight over to the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda, just outside Washington. What's going through your mind as you've watched this history unfold over the years as well?
Right. I also remember and was working when President Reagan was shot, and that was, a very scary time. I just spoke to two senior Republican officials. They do not know what the situation is with the president's health right now, but they pointed out two things. One is if the president is feeling well enough to walk to Marine One, and we see those pictures, those will be important optics. We are not getting much information from the White House. So it may very well be that the president wants us to see that picture of him. That said, Wolf, we all know, we heard Sanjay say this earlier and Dr. Wen, the fact that they are moving him to Walter Reed makes complete sense. It is the safe thing to do. But because of his age, because of this report of a fever now, it is probably out of an abundance of caution, but also because they're very concerned. I will tell you, I had a family member who had coronavirus and did not get a fever for the first 3 days, and actually over the weeks got much sicker, days 11, 12, 13. It's just anecdotal, but that has been a pattern we have seen where as time goes by, if someone is going to get much sicker, it can be down the road. So it's again very wise for someone his age to, and look, we have to worry about national security, the continuity of government, to make sure that he is in a place where if suddenly, he isn't doing well, they can take care of him, Wolf.
Jamie, stand by. I want to bring back Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who's watching all of this unfold. Sanjay, you know the procedures very well. I assume we'll get a shot of the president leaving the residence over there at the White House, walking towards Marine One. That would be significant in and of itself, as Jamie points out, right? Sanjay? I'm not hearing Sanjay.
It doesn't change the, Wolf, can you hear me?
Yeah, start again. I didn't hear the beginning.
The fact that there is a, Wolf, yeah, I think it would be certainly significant that the president would be walking out, and I fully expect that. I mean, they've described him as having, mild or moderate symptoms. But Wolf, it doesn't diminish the fact that the president is essentially being, rapidly transported to the hospital for this COVID disease. That is happening, and that reflects a level of concern here, Wolf. And it's something, I've been reporting on this since 1 o'clock in the morning. It's been a steadily building sort of level of concern, talking to people at the White House, hearing how they're characterizing things. So I think Jamie's absolutely right. It would be important to see the president walking out, but we are seeing something that's truly it's something that is a bit unsettling. I think very necessary. I think it's the right call from a medical perspective to have the president at a place like Walter Reed, where as good as the White House medical unit is, there's significantly more resources at Walter Reed. But this is not a decision that I think is taken lightly. To transport the president like this does signify that there was a significant level of concern. Wolf, I know I've said that many times, but we have to sort of speculate a bit on what it was specifically, because the White House doctor hasn't spoken to reporters. I mean, at this point, the president of the United States is about to essentially be medevaced to a hospital, and we don't still have very many details at all about what's going on here. So they really need to explain this, Wolf. The optics have been walking out, sure, but there's a lot of other stuff that is still unclear right now, Wolf.
And remind our viewers, Sanjay, why the president of the United States is now considered to be at higher risk of serious, potentially and hopefully not, but at higher risk of serious complications from coronavirus than someone much younger.
Right, Wolf. I mean, almost since the beginning when we started seeing some of the early data about this novel disease, now going back several months, it was clear that there were certain people who were going to be at higher risk because of age. So we know, for example, the president, 65 to 74-year-olds, he's 74, are 5 times more likely to be hospitalized because of obesity. He's 3 times more likely to be hospitalized. But it can vary. I mean, there's people who have these sort of pre-existing conditions and really never develop much in the way of symptoms, and there are people who have no pre-existing conditions and are younger and get very sick. So these are just general sort of trends that we see. One of the things about the president, as you know, Wolf, he did receive this experimental therapy at the White House, monoclonal antibody therapy, which again was I think, telegraphing some level of concern to give the president under compassionate use the highest dose of this antibody therapy. You do that, I think, if there's some sort of level of concern. Wolf, I do want to remind people that as again, unsettling as this is, statistically, the president still very much has the odds on his side. When you put all those risk factors together that I talked about, still greater than a 90% chance that he will, get through this. But he needs, obviously, to get the kind of care that they're probably going to provide for him at Walter Reed.
Yeah, he certainly does, and as we wait, I just want to point out, and Dan, I want to bring you into this conversation. There is, we're now told, a pool of network correspondents and photographers standing outside on the south lawn of the White House. We can't see them. And near the door over there, the president presumably at some point will be walking out. It'll be interesting, Dana, if the president stops and answers reporters' questions, or if he's simply going to go ahead and walk up to Marine One, board that helicopter, and make that very brief flight to the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda. But Dana, it's not going to be the first time he was over at Walter Reed, is it?
No, and really that is what is one of the many things just in covering Donald Trump and knowing the way that he approaches such things that is most fascinating. In fact, I was just texting with somebody who does not have any indication of his current condition. I want to make this clear, but somebody who knows the president and has had conversations about such things, and said, the fact that this president, who is all about optics and all about strength and all about shunning anything that even remotely looks like weakness, would not allow this unless he had to. And so that, I think, is very telling as to what we are seeing right now and what we could see. And that is why, like I said before, and Jamie obviously is hearing this from her sources as well, one of the key questions that everybody is looking towards right now is that lawn. and whether or not we are going to see the president. Again, knowing him and covering him, probably every fiber of his being wants to walk across that lawn and wave and say and show the world that he's okay. Hopefully he will be able to do that. So we'll see. I just want to make one other point, Wolf, if I may.
Yes.
We're looking at, the South Lawn of the White House. And it was in August, that very spot, that Donald Trump accepted the nomination of his party for the second time. And it was with great fanfare, and there were a lot of people on that lawn, and not a lot of people were wearing masks. And here we are, not even 6 weeks later, maybe 5 weeks later, a very, very different scene on that very same lawn.
Very different indeed. Caitlin Collins is watching all of this unfold, our White House correspondent. Caitlin, people will start asking questions once the president arrives at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland. Does he transfer his power to the vice president? Does he remain in charge? What are you hearing?
We are told, Wolf, that is not the plan, that has not happened, and officials do not expect that to happen as the president is spending the next several days at Walter Reed. Right now, we are told that the vice president is at his home at the Naval Observatory, but we are told by the White House Communications Director, Alyssa Farah, that there is not going to be a transfer of power. She says that President Trump is still very much in charge. So that is the status of things right now, Wolf. But of course, the question is what happens over the next few days? What happens with the president's condition, as Sanjay was noting, because of course if they are sending the president to Walter Reed not just for a brief afternoon visit or even just overnight, for the next several days, that reflects a different level of concern than what we've been hearing publicly from the chief of staff and from the press secretary and from the president's economic advisor today, who all seem to talk about mild symptoms, great spirits. This seems a little bit more concerning to that internally in the White House, as we are seeing Marine One sit on the South Lawn for close to, I believe, over 20 minutes now, as we are waiting on the president to come out. And of course, those images of what happens when he does come out will tell a story, since we haven't seen him. But it is notable that it does seem to be more of a concerning situation to the White House than they initially led us to believe. And you've got to remember, Wolf, that all of this that we're learning is all mainly coming from reporters and then being confirmed by the White House. Because you have to wonder, if Bloomberg had not first reported last night that Hope Hicks had tested positive, where would all of this have gone? And would the president have been tested that evening, or would it not have happened until later on today? There are so many what ifs about this, Wolf, and you've got to notice most of the information that we're getting is coming from reporters who are on the ground at the White House learning about the situation. So we'll have to wait to see what happens once he is actually at Walter Reed Hospital.
Very interesting indeed. And Caitlin, there is a pool of reporters and photojournalists waiting outside on the lawn of the South Lawn at the White House, waiting for the president to emerge and at least shout some questions if he doesn't want to stop and answer questions. Is that right?
That's right. You can't see them because they're just over Marine One, standing there beneath the Truman balcony. There are several reporters and cameras and photographers waiting. And what will be interesting, Wolf, is whether or not the president speaks. Of course, this is what they call chopper talk. He loves to talk to reporters as he's leaving the Oval Office. But notably, yesterday, he did not speak to reporters. And of course, there are some days when he chooses not to. But you have to wonder if the diagnosis of one of his top aides and closest confidants played a role in that, with the president yesterday declining to speak to reporters when he landed back from that fundraiser that we should note they went to anyway. The fundraiser that was partially indoors, partially outdoors, and yet the president went after aides had learned that Hicks had tested positive, which of course so many people are questioning the judgment of that now that the president has his own positive diagnosis. And so the president did not speak yesterday, Wolf. We'll wait to have to see if he does it as he's leaving today, because it could be our last opportunity to question the president if he's going to be spending the next few days inside the hospital, where of course we won't have as much access.
I'll be anxious to see, once we do see the president emerge from the residence over there on the South Lawn of the White House, whether he's wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, and all of that will be significant. Stand by, Caitlin. Gloria Borger is watching all of this unfold. Gloria, we've historic events. This is clearly history unfolding right here in the nation's capital.
Right before our very eyes. And I just keep thinking about not only the president's condition, and of course we all wish him well, but Kayleigh McEnany's statement, which said that the president will be working from Walter Reed. There has been no transfer of power. Mike Pence, as we were just told, is at the Naval Observatory. The president is still the president here, and she said he will be working from there. So what does that tell us about his physical condition? My question is, why haven't we had any real briefings about the health of our president? We have had a statement from his doctor, who, as we know, is an osteopath. He has told us what drugs the president is on, as Sanjay was talking about before. But I do think that this is a moment, if ever there were one, for the president's medical team to come out and brief the American people about the president's condition. We do not know anything beyond the tidbits we are getting from his doctor there, from Kayleigh McEnany, from someone like Larry Kudlow, who spoke to him and said he's in great spirits. And now suddenly we see Marine One there on the lawn ready to take him to Walter Reed. So I think we need to know more about the president's condition. Maybe, as Caitlin was saying, he will tell us himself. Maybe he'll come out and speak a little bit. Maybe he is not in any shape to do that. But I don't think we ought to be reading the tea leaves here, Wolf. I think we need to know the facts, and I think we need to know what exactly the situation is. And I don't think we're getting that information in the very least.
We're not getting it, at least not now, Gloria, and hopefully there will be a full briefing with the president's physicians on his condition and everything else. I want to bring in Dr. Tom Frieden, the former director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Dr. Frieden, thank you so much for joining us once again on this historic day. And like all of us, I'm sure you wish the president only the best, a speedy recovery. The only thing we learned in this statement from the president's doctor, Dr. Sean Conley, is that the president remains fatigued but in good spirits. He does have a fever. When you see all of this unfold, Dr. Frieden, what do you think?
You know, it's really a day-by-day issue. If people get more sick from COVID, it happens over 3 to 10 days, so it's going to be a while. The treatment that was given is unproven but promising, particularly early in disease, a cocktail of antibodies made in the laboratory. As has been noted, the overall risk of a fatal outcome in someone of the president's age is about 3%, though it's higher than that in males and people who are obese. We are thinking of the president, his family, the First Lady, and hoping they recover fully and soon. I think this obviously has implications in terms of contact tracing, mask wearing, what's the role of testing. All of those things have to be looked at. I do think that the testing likely gave people in the White House compound a false sense of security. It's really important people not go to work when they're sick. And it's really important that if you've been exposed, you quarantine yourself so you don't risk other people, and we can stop those chains of transmission. And of course, masks really do make a difference and are something that can help us get to a new normal as soon and safely as possible.
Why would the president go over to Walter Reed? What's available at Walter Reed, the National Military Medical Center, that's not necessarily available at the White House? Because they have a pretty sophisticated medical unit, as you know, at the White House itself.
Well, I think this is a responsible thing to do. You don't know what the coming days are going to hold. You want to monitor the oxygen capacity, so you're going to be doing oximetry to see if there's any dip there. You're going to maybe monitor fluid and electrolytes very carefully. You might get a CT scan to look at the lungs and see if there's a pneumonia there. So you really want someone who's 74 years old and has COVID and has such an important position to be in a hospital where they can be well managed, not in a health unit of a workplace, even if that workplace is the White House.
And what does it say to you, Dr. Frieden, that the president is being treated with this experimental Regeneron polyclonal antibody cocktail, which hasn't even been approved yet, even for emergency use?
Well, actually, this morning I had written that this is a promising treatment. It's unproven. There was a report only of fewer than 300 patients who received it. It seems to be most effective early in disease, especially before patients make antibodies of their own. We don't know if it'll be helpful, but it's something that is not unreasonable to try.
We're going to watch it very closely. Dr. Frieden, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it very much. As I said, history unfolding here in Washington, D.C. Dr. Sanjay Gupta is still with us. Sanjay, once again, we're waiting for the president to emerge from the White House and walk over to Marine One, which will take him on this very brief flight over to Walter Reed. We're learning more, but one of the most frustrating things, Sanjay, for all of us is that there's no formal, specific, detailed White House briefing from the physicians to tell the American public, indeed, to tell the world, and we're being seen right now in more than 200 countries and territories around the world, tell the world what's going on as far as the President of the United States is concerned.
Yeah, Wolf, I mean, it's really quite remarkable. You know, we've covered these sorts of things, nothing quite like this, but, you know, typically you get the president's doctor coming out and talking about things like this, especially as the president is essentially about to be medevaced via Marine One, no doubt, but medevaced to the hospital. And even what we've heard, Wolf, throughout the day, you know, since 1 o'clock this morning, we've had to sort of piece things together. Mild illness, doing well, had a fever since morning, now moderate illness, receiving an experimental therapy, all these sort of details being unfurled, and no specific comments or ability to take questions from the White House medical team. I mean, it really needs to happen. We still don't know fully what's going on here. I can tell you that clearly the fact that the president is going to be transported by helicopter there does raise a significant level of concern. I mean, they may say it's an abundance of caution, but as you pointed out with Dr. Frieden, I mean, the White House Medical Unit can do some of the things that Dr. Frieden was talking about, check pulse oximetry and things like that. There's something more happening here, Wolf, and the White House doctors need to come out, talk about this, answer questions, and I think it'll go a long way towards calming people down a bit, because it is a bit unsettling right now to see this, Wolf. Also, keep in mind, Wolf, that typically it is several days that pass between the time someone is diagnosed with this virus and the time that they need hospitalization. Today, we know, is when the president, we are told anyways, the first time the president diagnosed positive for the coronavirus, and seems to have had a significant, decline over the day, enough to at least warrant this visit to the hospital. The testing, presumably he gets tested every day, so presumably he's had negative tests the last several days, and all of this has happened kind of on the same day. That would also indicate a level of concern. Got the disease and is already having significant enough symptoms. I think that's probably, again, why they've said, hey, the place the president needs to be is the hospital, close to an intensive care unit, close to the ability to provide whatever additional care he might need. We don't know, but that's what might happen. Boris Johnson, Wolf, mid-50s. He was diagnosed. A week later, he was in the hospital, spent 3 days in the intensive care unit, recovered from all that, but, that was a frightening time, certainly, for him.
We're watching all of this unfold. Sanjay, don't go too far away. We're going to need your expertise as we get more and more information. And just to update our viewers here in the United States and around the world who may just be tuning in, I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room. We're following major breaking news here in Washington, D.C. You're looking at live pictures coming in from the south lawn of the White House, where Marine One, the president's helicopter, is standing by. It will take the president on a very brief flight over to the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland. Very brief flight, maybe 10 minutes, if that, not very far away. The last time the president went to Walter Reed, he was in a motorcade, drove there by car, maybe a 20-minute car ride through the streets of Washington, D.C., heading towards suburban Maryland. But right now, we're waiting for the president to emerge. There are journalists, there are photojournalists, camera crews outside waiting to see the president emerge. We'll see if he stops and talks to reporters. We are told that the White House press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, is already standing by over there, and she is, as opposed to most other times, wearing a face mask right now as we wait for the president to emerge. I want to bring in our White House correspondent, Jeremy Diamond, who's over at Walter Reed for us. So, Jeremy, you're getting more information. Set the scene, what's going on right now, because fairly soon we're told the president will board Marine One and fly over to where you are.
That's right, Wolf. Any moment now we are expecting the President of the United States to board Marine One on the south lawn of the White House, where he will come here. We are in front of Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, where the President will be admitted as a coronavirus patient. This comes, Wolf, after the President tested positive for coronavirus. In the very early hours of this morning is when the President released that information, posting on Twitter that he and the First Lady had tested positive for the virus, Wolf. The White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany, in just the last 45 minutes or so, put out this statement announcing that the president was going to be admitted to Walter Reed Hospital, not just for a few hours for a battery of tests or something like that, but rather that he will be actually staying here and living here for several days. This is the statement from the White House press secretary. She writes, President Trump remains in good spirits, has mild symptoms, and has been working throughout the day. She says out of an abundance of caution and at the recommendation of his physician and medical experts, the president will be working from the presidential offices at Walter Reed for the next few days. President Trump appreciates the outpouring of support for both he and the First Lady. Now, Wolf, this comes amid an evolution that we have seen from this White House in terms of how they've been describing exactly what the president has been undergoing. Initially when we learned that the president had this, we heard that he was having moderate symptoms. The White House Chief of Staff earlier today actually said that the president was very energetic. And then came this second letter from the White House physician, Dr. Sean Conley, which came just a few hours ago, where he said that the president was fatigued. And that indeed the president has been facing symptoms. We also learned through another source that the president has been having a fever all day long. Well, so there certainly has been an evolution in terms of how they've been describing what the president has been feeling and what he's been undergoing. And obviously, Wolf, as we were talking about in the last hour, this is the optics president, and the fact that he would be coming here to Walter Reed for several days, sending a really serious signal to the world that he is not only facing this disease, but that he is experiencing symptoms and needs to be monitored at a hospital. Wolf, it must have taken a lot for the president to actually agree to that. And so this is where we are, Wolf, with the president set to arrive any moment now, set to leave the White House any moment now to arrive here at Walter Reed Hospital, where he will be treated for several days for coronavirus. And additionally, Wolf, we learned earlier today that the president has already been giving this experimental treatment, a promising experimental treatment, which is an antibody cocktail, as well as some other things like vitamins that the president is receiving. But obviously the fact that he's coming here to the hospital, they have a lot of medical equipment already, Wolf, at the White House. And so coming to the hospital suggests a higher degree of concern, and certainly that they are at least wanting to have the president monitored with much more sophisticated equipment and with a whole team of doctors around him.
All right, we'll see what happens unfold. Once again, that's Marine One standing by on the south lawn of the White House to take the medevac, as Dr. Sanjay Gupta points out, to medevac the president from the White House over to Walter Reed. Bob Woodward is joining us right now, the author of the brand new book, Rage, who spent a lot of quality time with the president and interviewing the president for this best-selling book. Bob, you and I have covered a lot of history here in Washington. When you see what's going on, the drama right now that's happening, the president confirming himself that he's tested positive for coronavirus, and now he has a fever, he's fatigued, and he's about to be flown over on Marine One to Bethesda. What do you think?
Well, first of all, you've got to wish him and the First Lady and everyone well. And I mean, that is a serious concern. We're talking in the media about, gee, we'd like to know more. Quite frankly, I think we can count to 10. They need to treat him and take care of him. The focus should be there. Now, over the months of my conversations with him, and this may shed some light on his thinking about how to deal with the virus in terms of himself, I had lots of conversations back in April. What was very interesting, he said, look, the virus moves rapidly and viciously. He was very concerned about it. And then he said, if you're in a certain group, you're in, it's a much bigger hazard for you. I asked him, well, what is that group? And he said, well, if you're older, and he put the cutoff age at 80. He said, if you're 80 and have some other medical condition, then you're really in trouble. And then we talked about how old he was, how old I was. He was 73 at the time. He's now 74. So at least in his mind, as he expressed it, at the time, the concern was really a focus on somebody at age 80. Then the next week, on April 13th, I did ask him directly. I said, look, you walk around, you meet with people. Aren't you risking getting the virus? the way you move and talk to people, go to briefings, deal with people, are close to them. And I said, are you worried about that? And he said, no, I'm not. I don't know why I'm not. I'm not. I asked why, and he just said, I don't know. I'm just not. And so it sounds like he's saying he thought because of his age, because of his health, and almost a semi-mystical belief that he didn't need to worry about himself. So that may account for some of his actions, but this obviously is a serious medical moment, and we're going to just have to be patient and see how it works itself out, I think.
And as you say, we all wish the president a speedy recovery from this coronavirus. We wish the First Lady a speedy recovery. We wish everyone a speedy recovery. We just did get this statement from the president, middle son Eric Trump, Bob. It's on Twitter. Let me read it to you and to our viewers. Donald Trump is a true warrior. He will fight through this with the same strength and conviction that he uses to fight for America each and every day. I ask you to join me in praying for his recovery. I have never been more proud of someone and what they have had to endure. When you hear those words coming from Eric Trump, Bob, what do you think?
Well, I think, they're acknowledging, and just because they're going to take him to Walter Reed, it's very serious. I think, whatever attitude you may have toward Trump, I think there would be very wide, if not almost universal agreement. He's a warrior. He's a fighter. This is what you need to be in this situation. And I agree wholeheartedly with you. Prayers and thoughts and anything anyone can do to help him. And obviously the medical team is focused on that. And again, it'd be nice to have briefings and know all kinds of things. I think we can put that on the back shelf at least for a few minutes, if not a few hours, and let them do what they're doing. If you or I were in that situation, you would want the energy to go to that. Quite frankly, not being overly concerned about briefing the media or the public at this moment. They obviously are going to at some point, but maybe patience is called for.
And once again, we're waiting for Marine One to take the president from the South Lawn of the White House to Bethesda, Maryland, the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. On that note, that point, Bob, that you were just making, let me read a statement that we just received from the former President Barack Obama, and let me read it to you. Let me start by just saying that we're in the midst of a big political fight, and we take that very seriously. We also want to extend our best wishes to President Trump and Melania. Michelle and I are hopeful that they and others who have been affected by COVID-19 around the country are getting the care that they need, that they are going to be on the path to a speedy recovery. And it's important, I think, for all of us to remember that even when we're in the midst of big political battles with issues that have a lot at stake, that we're all Americans and we're all human beings, hoping that we can all be healthy. And on a related note, the Joe Biden campaign has just announced they're pulling, Bob, all negative ads today, going all positive after the president has been diagnosed with COVID-19. Those are significant developments in and of themselves, as you point out, Bob.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly the right posture to take. And I listened to Biden earlier. I thought he struck exactly the right note. We are a month away from a presidential election that obviously is going to be critical. But I think those words that former President Obama uttered and others are uttering are absolutely important, and that it is critical to show that there is a kind of unity here on wishing him well. As we know, we only have one president at a time. He has the job, and I really hope, and I think it's obvious now, people are going to show the concern for his health and as you say, speedy recovery, which is quite possible.
We hope it, in fact, it happens. He's going to have world-class treatment over at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, as we all know. You know, Bob, you've covered every president since Nixon. Set the scene for us from a historic perspective, what we're seeing unfold. And once again, we're seeing Marine One, the president's helicopter, standing by in the south lawn of the White House to take him over to the Walter Reed Hospital.
Okay. Yeah, well, this is any time, whether it was Reagan having an operation or when Reagan was shot in 1981. I mean, everyone was holding their breath. I think it is a bipartisan holding of breath at that time, and I think it is now. And there is indeed concern, and people are talking about the president's approach. Quite frankly, I spent many hours this year talking to him at night, on weekends, during the day. I'd call him, he'd call me. We covered the waterfront in terms of discussion topics. And as I say, we actually got into what age group would you be in that you're really worried, and he said age 80. So let's wait and see what's going to happen. And I think his son saying he's a warrior, I would endorse that from knowing Trump as an outsider maybe as much as anyone does.
Yeah, that's very true indeed. Our Bob Woodward, thanks so much. Once again, the book is entitled Rage. It's really a terrific insight into the current president of the United States. Bob Woodward, thanks very much. Jamie Gangel, our special correspondent, is with us. Jamie, I understand you're getting some new information. You're doing some reporting on what's taking so long. The Marine One has been on the South Lawn now, I'm guessing, for about an hour or so.
So, Wolf, as you know, the lack of information here is we're just not normal procedure. Normally, we would be getting more information from the White House doctor, the White House press office, and I reached out to several White House officials. I reached out to senior Republicans. They don't have any information either. They each said to me, I reached out to 5 different people, that they are watching us, that they don't know what is going on with the president's health, that they haven't been briefed. And that's just, not only isn't it normal procedure, and we've all learned that the Trump White House doesn't conduct itself the way other White Houses do, but it is a particular concern right now because we have a national security issue and the president's health is at stake.
Certainly is right now. We're waiting for the president to emerge. We'll see when that happens, and we'll have, of course, special coverage of all of this. Dana, I know you're doing some reporting on all of this, so what are you hearing?
Well, I just want to echo what Jamie is saying. I mean, I'm reaching out to people who are usually informed about what's going on inside the president's world. And the people I'm talking to, just like Jamie, aren't hearing anything. And, yes, it is true that not so long ago, maybe an hour and a half ago, we got a statement from the president's doctor that gave us the cocktail that they're giving him, which for Donald Trump, that was maybe a big deal. But what Sanjay was saying was obviously, as we're watching now, dead on, that they were kind of leaving breadcrumbs that something bigger was going on other than the fact that he just had mild symptoms, which is what they started telling us as the day began. And just the fact that there doesn't seem to be very much outgoing information at all. And in fact, what we are getting are tweets like Eric Trump's tweet, which was beautiful, but also I thought very stark, is different from what we usually see with this White House.
Yeah.
Not when it comes to telling the media, but at least reaching out to allies outside the White House.
when Eric Trump, the president's son, says, "I ask you to join me in praying for his recovery. I have never been more proud of someone and what they have had to endure," which suggests the president is going through a tough situation right now. That from the president's son, Eric Trump. Gloria is still with us as well. I know you're doing some reporting. What are you hearing?
Well, I think it's important to note, first of all, overall, Wolf, and I heard what Bob Woodward was saying, but I want to respectfully disagree because I think we could be getting more information than we're getting, although it seems to me that the White House staff standing out there, masked now, doesn't have a lot more information than we do. But I think what's concerning to me is what Manu Raju is reporting from the Hill, which is that top leaders of Congress have not had any briefings about the president's health. The Gang of Eight has not been notified about his health or about the transfer to Walter Reed, and that is, I think that is really problematic. Now, Manu's also reporting that Trump did reach out to some of his allies on Capitol Hill earlier today, like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell, but we don't really know anything more than that. And I think it is particularly concerning given the fact that the president has been given an experimental monoclonal antibody cocktail. And that really does speak to some level of concern on the part of the president's doctors about the president's health, because it is experimental, and I'm no doctor. Sanjay can clearly talk about this better than I can. But I do believe that even if you're not doing a full-fledged briefing on the president's health, that as we sit and we await his departure here now for more than an hour, I do think that the public is owed more detail than they've been given. Hopefully that'll be forthcoming once the president gets to Walter Reed. But what is particularly concerning is that people on Capitol Hill, including the Gang of Eight, which are, the leaders of the House and the Senate, they have not been told anything either.
Interesting. Gloria, stand by. We are now told the president is aboard Marine One. You can see the helicopter, the blades beginning to turn. He is aboard Marine One. He walked out of the door on the south lawn of the White House, did not speak and answer reporters' questions, did not make a statement. He just kept on walking. We'll get the video of that and show it to our viewers soon. But you can see Marine One getting ready to take off from the south lawn of the White House and make that brief 8 or 10 minute flight over to the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland. It's interesting, Gloria, I think that the president didn't even make simply walked out and boarded Marine One. It'll be interesting also to see who was with the president, what the president was wearing. Was he wearing a mask? We're going to get all that information fairly soon. We'll get that videotape and we'll see what's going on. Jeremy Diamond, you're getting some more information. You're already there at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. What are you hearing?
Yeah, Wolf, well, we will get that video of the president boarding Marine One shortly. This is one of those events where it's not live, but we feed the tape in, so we will see that video shortly. But what we do know from our pool producer, Nikki Carvajal, who was there, she said that the president walked out of the residence and he was wearing a mask. He was also in a suit, and that he waved to the media but did not stop to talk. I presume that reporters were probably shouting questions to the president, but he apparently did not answer those walking over to Marine One. He was also accompanied, Wolf, by the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, who earlier today we saw talking to reporters without a mask. He was wearing a mask as he was following the president onto Marine One. In fact, there has been a policy, Wolf, that White House aides actually do wear masks aboard Marine One for quite some time now, but notable that the White House Chief of Staff was actually walking across the South Lawn with a mask on. And as we were waiting for the president, Wolf, our colleague Jim Acosta took a picture of several White House staffers.
Marine One, Jeremy, hold on for a moment. Marine One now taking off, lifting from the south lawn of the White House to make that brief flight. It'll head north towards Bethesda, Maryland. Very often when a president, and I covered the White House for 7 years, the president will simply have a car, be in the limousine, the presidential limo, and do a motorcade drive. It's not very far over to Bethesda, but right now he's going in Marine One, and you can see the chopper taking off and will be heading there. You can see it right there. Usually there are at least one other, maybe two other helicopters in the area, other Marine helicopters escorting Marine One. But there you see it going over the nation's capital and heading towards Bethesda. We'll try to keep a shot up as long as we can. But Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, well, Wolf, and it's only going to take the president a few minutes. You know, it's about a half-hour drive from the White House to here, much shorter, obviously, by helicopter. So in a matter of minutes, really, we'll likely be seeing the president's helicopter land on the field in front of Walter Reed Military Medical Center, which is where we are right now. But Wolf, as I was saying, Jim Acosta took a picture of some White House staffers who were gathered for the president's departure. All of them were wearing masks. Nearly a dozen staffers there. And Wolf, what's remarkable is that picture was a novelty. I mean, I can't recall another instance where I have seen so many White House staffers actually wearing masks at the same time. And we are months into this pandemic, Wolf, and yet it takes the President of the United States coming down with coronavirus for the White House to begin following many of its own CDC guidelines, which they have been encouraging Americans to follow for months now. And yet we are only now starting to see that trickle into the White House. And beyond that, Wolf, obviously, as we are talking about the president's condition, the change in how the White House has been describing his condition throughout the day. One of the reasons why we are obviously so skeptical of the way that they've been describing the president's condition is because this is a White House, Wolf, that has obviously consistently withheld information, offered counterfactual, false information, not only about the president himself, but about a range of topics. And so we often talk about this White House's credibility problem, Wolf, and this is when it matters. These are those national security crises when the White House's credibility matters. It doesn't just matter as it relates to matters of foreign policy and matters of war and peace, but it also matters when it comes to the president's health, which is also, of course, a national security matter. And we are now seeing the results, Wolf, of 5 years from the president's candidacy throughout his time in the White House of his falsehoods and his lies coming back to bite him, in the sense that it is very hard to believe word for word everything that the White House is saying about the president's condition. And furthermore, because of the fact that there has been shifting explanations throughout the day, the White House Chief of Staff saying the president's very energized, then the Dr. Sean Conley, the White House physician, saying that the president is fatigued merely hours later.
You see Marine One escorted by another Marine helicopter making their way over to the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda. Should be there fairly soon. We are told, Jeremy, that when the president walked out of the residence on the south lawn of the White House, he was wearing a mask. He was wearing a suit. He waved to the news media who were stationed there, but he did not stop to talk. He was accompanied by the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, who was also wearing a mask. He followed the president out to Marine One. The president boarded Marine One, by the way, at 6:17 p.m. Eastern. It's now 6:24 p.m. Eastern, and we see the helicopter making its way towards the Walter Reed Medical Center. We're about to get also the actual video. Here's the video of the president walking out. Let's watch.
Can you tell us about how you're doing right now?
All right, that's the video. So we saw the president walking out. We saw Mark Meadows. They were wearing masks. Others carrying some, I assume, equipment. I don't know what kind of equipment it was, but you saw them walking out with masks as well, boarding Marine One to make this flight. The helicopter still in the air over Washington, D.C., making its way to suburban Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C., to Bethesda. You looked at, and Sanjay Gupta is with us. When you saw the president, Sanjay, and you're a physician, you understand these things. What did his look suggest to you? Could we make any determination as to his state when we saw him walking out there, Sanjay?
No, I think it would be hard to speculate too much on that. Obviously, he was walking on his own. He seemed to not have any difficulty with that or going up the stairs or anything. He was wearing a mask, as you point out, which is absolutely mandatory now, especially now that he has the virus. We know that. But no, there's nothing particularly concerning that you see when he just boards the helicopter there. But I wouldn't have necessarily expected that either. He even with moderate symptoms, fever, not feeling well, fatigued, whatever it may be, this would still fit with that. It's the level of concern, Wolf, that prompted this, the helicopter flight over to the hospital. So hopefully, as you have asked, and hopefully we'll get more details about what prompted that specifically. But we know he's going there, and he's expected to stay there for some time. So that's just, they're giving us clues here that there's a level of concern that obviously changed, as Jeremy Diamond pointed out, throughout the day. And we're sort of forced to speculate on what that is. So hopefully we'll get more details, maybe from the medical team at Walter Reed after he arrives there and is assessed.
Hopefully we will. We can see Marine One making its way to Bethesda, Maryland, about to land at the hospital. They've been in the air for maybe almost close to 10 minutes. Jim Acosta, you were there on the South Lawn. Jim, when the president walked out together with the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, and others, what was it like?
Well, Wolf, first of all, I can tell you we waited for about an hour for the president to come out. At about 5:15, the White House pool, which we're a part of today, was brought out to the South Lawn of the White House where, Wolf, we wait out there for the president to depart on Marine One. And, when the president came out, we asked him some questions. He didn't want to take any of those questions. Obviously, the striking difference was that the president was wearing a mask. We don't see him wearing a mask very often. I will tell you, Wolf, and I don't know how much you can read into this. I could see some fatigue in the president's eyes. You could tell he looked tired. And it appeared to me that Marine One was just taking a little bit extra time leaving the White House grounds this evening. That could also just be the way they were flying this evening, but everything seemed to be moving a little bit slower this evening, which of course is understandable, Wolf, given the situation that the president's in right now. The other thing I will tell you that was really striking standing there on the South Lawn of the White House, and I think you made note of this earlier, Wolf, I have never seen so many White House officials in the press office wearing masks. As we were waiting for the president to depart the White House and board Marine One, you could see the press secretary and various communications and press staffers wearing their masks. They almost never do that walking around the White House. They almost see it as a source of pride that they don't wear masks. That seems to have changed on a dime this evening, Wolf. It seems to have turned on a dime this evening. And so now we're just waiting to see what happens next. I mean, obviously, this doesn't happen very often for the President of the United States to essentially be airlifted or medevaced from the White House to Walter Reed. Suggests that this is a serious situation. The White House has been telling us all day long, he's just dealing with mild symptoms and so on. Honestly, Wolf, I think we're just going to need more information before we can take that to the bank. If he were just dealing with mild symptoms and he was in good spirits, as they've been telling us, one has to wonder, why is all of this necessary? But again, as I was saying, as he was leaving the White House, he just seemed to be moving a little slower than we're usually seeing him. Typically this president, he likes to talk to reporters. You've seen this on so many different occasions. It's a beautiful evening. Would have been just fine for him to stop and talk to us. And he went right past us, flashed a thumbs up. I asked him, how are you doing? How long do you expect to be gone from the White House? All we got was a thumbs up from the president. Mark Meadows, the chief of staff, following behind him. But that's about it. And now we're just waiting to see how long will the president of the United States be hospitalized? How long will he be there? How long will he be treated? And we're now waiting, the latest developments on that, Wolf.
Yeah, we do know there's a presidential suite there at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center where he will be, we're told, for several days right now. You see Marine One. It has landed there at the helipad at Walter Reed. Caitlin Collins is getting some new information for us as well. What are you learning, Caitlin?
Well, Wolf, we're learning a little bit more of what could have played a role in this visit that you're seeing the president make, as, of course, the Marine there wearing a mask as well, we should point out, is getting ready for the president himself to get off Marine One. But we were told that he is spooked by this diagnosis, Wolf. The president is someone who is obviously very concerned about his health. He has always kind of been that figure if you talk to people who knew him before he took office. But we're told that he became increasingly alarmed by this diagnosis and as he was developing symptoms overnight. And so it really seemed to set in with the president what was going on. And that is a big difference from what you heard his tone during that interview last night on Sean Hannity when he said that he had been tested, Wolf, and they were waiting on a result. He sounded very nonchalant, did not seem too concerned. We are told that has changed significantly, and the president's mood now is much more freaked out than what it had been, immediately upon diagnosis.
Here comes the president who's now walking down. Let's just listen and watch, see if we can hear anything. No, we can't. We're not going to be able to hear anything. He's going to get into one of those vans that will make a very short drive over to the actual hospital, and he'll head in, and he's going to be there for a few days. Caitlin, go ahead. Finish your thought. We'll see this motorcade depart momentarily.
Yeah, notice that every single person you see is wearing a mask that's around the president, including the chief of staff, including these body men. Those are the guys with the bags that travel with the president. You don't normally see them wearing masks, Wolf, when they've been going to these rallies, getting on Marine One, because of course they felt this false sense of security with a test. And we are seeing how it took their boss, the president, getting coronavirus to really wake some people up about wearing a mask and how the precautions about them taking, because we have not seen that level of precaution at all inside the White House. And so it will be interesting to see how this changes things. But this is something that went off like a bomb inside the White House today, Wolf. People realizing that their boss, the president of the United States, had tested positive for coronavirus really shook people up. And so many people we spoke with were upset about it. They couldn't believe it. It was like a disbelief situation, Wolf. And it does make you question what will be different going forward about the way that they are working out of the West Wing now that the president is not going to be there for a few days. It's hard to overstate how significant this moment is.
Yeah, and we're told, by the way, Caitlin, that the president, as soon as he leaves this motorcade, he'll go upstairs to what are called the presidential offices and the presidential suite. It's a large complex, as we know. There you see the Bethesda, the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda. But there's a sitting room for the president, a conference room for the president, and the actual hospital bedroom for the president. And according to the White House press secretary, the president will be, quote, working there. And we've also been reporting he will not be transferring power to the vice president. He will still be in charge. Doug Brinkley, the presidential historian, is with us right now. So give us a little sense of history as to what we're seeing, Doug.
Well, for starters, the White House now is a hotbed of COVID-19. And that's not just the residency of the president, but this is our executive branch is really under siege by the virus. Everybody should be wearing a mask, but the entire White House apparatus, every room, every building is going to have to be super sanitized at this point because many people work there. Secondly, I don't think we're going to be having these press spokesmen as we're used to in presidential history speaking for the president, unless he is really to the point of unable to communicate. He does have Twitter. He probably will communicate once he feels he's in a safe zone there, some information, maybe even dabble in politics in the next day or two. And the good news for President Trump is that he's got the best medical attention imaginable at Walter Reed, while his age being in his being in the mid 70s isn't good, and being overweight, 95% of people in a situation are going to weather this okay. But it has to be a humiliation for this president who's been making jokes about the mask that Joe Biden wears, almost created a 2020 campaign of mocking the mask-wearing public, and here he is hobbling to Walter Reed Hospital on Marine One, having to wear a mask. And in many ways, it'll be part of the narrative of this year, this sort of grand medical humiliation he had. And also, Wolf, I could say one other thing. I think the president has to be fatigued. I mean, running how he has on 2020 nonstop and coming out of that big debate, he's fighting the virus with exhaustion.
It's a very serious development that we're watching unfold. And as I've repeatedly said, on behalf of all of our viewers here in the U.S. and around the world, we, of course, wish the president a very speedy recovery. We wish him the best, and hopefully he won't have to spend too long over there. We're getting some more information coming in. The president just tweeted a video, we're told. Let me play it for our viewers.
I want to thank everybody for the tremendous support. I'm going to Walter Reed Hospital. I think I'm doing very well, but we're going to make sure that things work out. The First Lady is doing very well. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I will never forget it. Thank you.
Short statement from the president trying to reassure the American public and American friends around the world that he's okay, that the First Lady is okay as well. Jeremy Diamond, you're there at Walter Reed. We saw crowds gathering outside. They wanted to get, an image, a historic moment. Indeed, what are you seeing where you are?
Yeah, well, we saw the president arrive here at Walter Reed Medical Center. He landed on Marine One. The president got off of Marine One, down the steps, and then boarded one of those SUVs that he typically uses for transportation, really to take him just a couple dozen yards, Wolf, so that he could go inside Walter Reed Hospital, which is behind me, behind this fence here. And Wolf, there was a scene here as well as the president was arriving. I mean, we saw many of the president's supporters. We also saw people who were against the president, and they are still gathered here. You can see a crowd of people who have been gathered here to watch the president arrive here at the hospital. Obviously a very significant situation, as something that a lot of his supporters simply wanted to see. We also saw some supporters trying to block media cameras from actually filming the arrival of the president. They are obviously aware that there are health concerns here, and this is something, an image that some of his supporters perhaps don't want to see. They don't want to give that to the media, to allow the media to cover this. Obviously, we were still able to get the shot here, Wolf, but there is a scene of people who have gathered as the President of the United States, 74 years old, in a high-risk category, of course, as it relates to coronavirus, is now admitted to the hospital for several days.
You see Marine One, the helicopter behind you, taking off. That's why it's hard to hear you right now, Jeremy. But Marine One did its mission, about a 10-minute flight from the south lawn of the White House to where you are over at the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. Jeremy, stand by. Gloria, when we heard the president in that brief little video that he tweeted, when he said, "I think I'm doing very well, but we're going to make sure that things work out." What did you think of what the president said? What did you think of how the president looked? Because he clearly didn't stop to speak and answer questions when he emerged from the White House to board Marine One.
Well, I think the only way we can know that he is doing well, as we all hope he is to hear from his doctors. And I know I sound like a broken record tonight about this, Wolf, but the people we're hearing from is the little video of the president, the Eric Trump tweet, and really nothing else aside from a perfunctory letter from his doctor inside the White House telling us that he is on an experimental drug, which they gave to him, I presume, intravenously. And we really haven't heard anything else. It's reassuring to see that the president could do that video, that he could walk out and kind of wave to people. Obviously, it looked like he didn't have the kind of energy he normally has. But this is why you need people inside the White House who are not just his family, but we need people and doctors who can tell us what is really occurring here. And I'm hopeful that perhaps once he gets assessed at Walter Reed, we'll be able to have some more information. But I don't even think this is a close call, Wolf. You have a president who is being helicoptered over to Walter Reed, and we're not quite sure exactly what is occurring or why that needs to occur. If it is out of an abundance of caution, then that's great. But let a doctor tell us that. I don't think this is time to wait. I do think that the American public is watching this play out in real time, and that the public deserves an explanation from the medical experts. If they do not want people just sort of saying, okay, this is what I think is going on, this is what I think may be going on, then tell the American public exactly what is going on. And I think the video from the president may reassure the public that, great, the president is in his suit, he's in his tie, he looks the way he normally looks, and he tells you he's going to Walter Reed, but he didn't really provide any information other than saying, look, I hope things are going well, and so does the American public, but let the doctors tell us exactly what is going on.
Yeah, the president, and maybe we can cue it up. I'd like to hear the president's statement again. You know, Javi, if we could just cue that up. Let's play it for our viewers one more time. This is the statement that the president posted on Twitter. Listen to this.
I want to thank everybody for the tremendous support. I'm going to Walter Reed Hospital. I think I'm doing very well, but we're going to make sure that things work out. The First Lady is doing very well. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I will never forget it. Thank you.
Sanjay Gupta is still with us as well, our chief medical correspondent. So when you saw the president in that brief 20 or 25-second statement, Sanjay, what did you think?
You know, it's so hard to speculate on anything there, Wolf. I mean, he looked good, obviously standing there, you know, not requiring any kind of aid or anything like that. So that was certainly good to see. I mean, again, just from that short video, did he appear out of breath? Not to me, but, you know, that's you know, something that, again, just hard to tell there. So I don't know that we could read too much into that. One thing, Wolf, I'll say as well, to Gloria's point, you know, regarding the doctors, I was curious whether any members of the coronavirus task force have been involved at all today. You know, you got some of the world's most expert people on COVID and the novel infection. And what I'm hearing is that they are in the dark as well. They are getting details about this from watching the television coverage and reading the news reports right now. So it's a little surprising to me, again, when you have that level of expertise at your disposal in terms of what's best to do for clinical care. It sounds like the task force members are not part of this decision-making process either.
Stand by, Sanjay. I want to bring in our chief legal analyst, Jeffrey Toobin, who's watching all of this unfold. We heard earlier, Jeffrey, that the president has no intention of transferring power, authority to the vice president of the United States. There are procedures in place if a president does get ill, right?
That's right. It's the 25th Amendment, which was passed it was ratified in 1967, partially in response to the Kennedy assassination. And the procedure has been used 3 times. Ronald Reagan invoked it before he had cancer surgery, and George Herbert Walker Bush did it twice when he got routine colonoscopies. And what it is the president writes a letter to the president pro tem of the Senate, who's now Chuck Grassley, and the Speaker of the House, now Nancy Pelosi, and says, I transfer the powers of the president to my vice president. And at some point, he then writes another letter taking those powers back. That's how the process is designed to work. The question now is President Trump sick enough where he would want to transfer his powers to Vice President Pence? According to the spokesman we just heard from, the answer is no, but given the evolving explanations of the president's condition and the fact that he's been transferred to a hospital, does raise the question about whether or when such a transfer of power will take place.
Yeah, that's very, very significant indeed. We'll see what happens on that front. The former Secretary of Homeland Security, Jeh Johnson, is joining us right now. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for joining us. As I've been saying, this is history unfolding right now. You're looking at it from your perspective. What do you think?
I think a couple things. First, Jeff points out the 25th Amendment. I don't think we're anywhere near the need to invoke that yet. It's been invoked in the past when the president's gone under general anesthesia. My other thought is this. The White House docs that the president is with are first rate. I was a patient of the White House docs. I've been at Walter Reed. I've been an inpatient there. I've been there overnight. He's receiving first-hand, first-class medical care.
So you're confident the president will get the best treatment in the world for coronavirus?
Yes.
And you don't think it's necessary right now to transfer power, according to the 25th Amendment to the Constitution, to the vice president, who's, we're told, over at the vice president's residence here in Washington at the Naval Observatory. At what point, though, and you're the former Secretary of Homeland Security.
Wolf, if I could say.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's based upon what we, the public, are seeing, the information we are seeing. Based upon what I see, I think that would be premature right now.
To transfer power. At some point, though, if the president needs an operation, then that's automatic, right?
Well, it's not automatic. The president has to agree under Section 3 of the 25th Amendment that power should be transferred to the vice president. And as Jeff points out, that's been done 3 times in the past. And in those instances, the president was under general anesthesia.
And that's what happened.
He was out.
You say you were treated there at Bethesda. We used to call it Bethesda Naval Hospital. Now it's the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. When you were treated there, were you then the general counsel over at the Department of Defense, or were you the Secretary of Homeland Security?
Actually, both. I went up there when I was at the Pentagon and when I was the Secretary of DHS.
Because I'm curious.
Excellent facility.
I'm curious, Mr. Secretary. Take us inside. What was it like?
It's very large, but somebody who is a very senior government official is escorted around. It's not like you have to find your way around. And it's a first-rate facility. Military docks are excellent. I frankly was a little spoiled
when you were there, which is understandable. Let me ask you about the national security ramifications right now. People are watching all over the world, friendly countries, allies, but also adversaries. And some adversaries, whether Russia or China or Iran, North Korea, they might want to take advantage of a moment when they suspect the president and the U.S. government may be preoccupied with other stuff. How serious potentially of a problem is that?
Wolf, I feel obliged to say this. We have still a national security advisor who is active and on the job. We have a Secretary of Defense and a Department of Defense that is active and still on the job. We have a Secretary of State who's on the job, who's tested negative for COVID. And so, and the Chief of Staff is with the president. You saw that on the images. And so our government is active and functioning. I will offer this, Wolf.
Yeah.
I think respectfully that those in the presidential line of succession, particularly the top half of the presidential line of succession, should think very seriously about some form of quarantine for themselves while we're in this period.
Are you talking about the vice president, the Speaker of the House, the Senate, the senator, the top senator, Senator Grassley?
Senate,
we're talking about the
Secretary of State, Treasury, AG, and possibly Defense.
And so you want all of them to quarantine?
I was actually the last person in the in the presidential line of
yours. The Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security, is the newest cabinet department. But tell us once again, because I think this is interesting, why you think all of these individuals, these cabinet members, the top leadership in the House and the Senate needs to stand down right now and quarantine.
I believe that while we're in this period with this invisible virus circulating around Washington right now, that those in the line of succession in the top half need to think seriously about some form of quarantine.
Just to err on the side of caution, because this is a really sensitive moment right now. Secretary,
if I could, I also want to say this. This should be a wake-up call for all of Americans that we're still in the clutches of this invisible virus. And we see the numbers going up in a number of states. There's a lot more we need to do. We should not let our guard down. The most secure American in this country gets this virus, none of us is safe. And we know how to deal with this. A simple mask. This should not be regarded as something that is a matter of political correctness. This should not be regarded as something that only, that no real men wear. This 10-cent device can make a huge difference.
It could save people's lives. And yesterday, the Johns Hopkins University noted about 45,000 Americans were confirmed with coronavirus, the President and the First Lady among them. And unfortunately, 857 Americans just yesterday, died from coronavirus. So, Mr. Secretary,
Correct.
You make a very important point. It's not over by any means, despite a lot of wishful thinking out there right now. It's still a very deadly and contagious coronavirus pandemic that the entire country, and indeed so much of the world, is going through right now. And a simple mask, washing your hands, social distancing, that will save lives. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back to Jamie Gangel. She's getting some new information on that brief little video that the president posted in which he says, I'm doing very well, but we're going to make sure that things work out. What are you learning, Jamie?
So, Wolf, I just wanted to point out, I heard from two people who are very familiar with the White House and how these things are done. And their point about the video was, that was a very short video. It was about 18 seconds. It was controlled. This is a president who loves to stop and talk to the press when he's going out on the South Lawn. And they were really concerned because even though he looked okay when he was walking, as Sanjay said, he sounds okay in the video. He could have quickly stopped, spoken to the press, said, this is just a precaution, everything's okay. The fact that he chose to do it in the controlled video spoke volumes to two of my sources.
Yeah, very interesting indeed, because you're right. He could have simply walked over, said to the press, I'm doing fine, we're doing this out of an abundance of caution, I'll be in touch. And he didn't even have to answer reporters' questions, could have continued walking. But you make a good point. What else are you hearing, Jamie, from behind the scenes about what's going on over there at the White House?
So actually what surprised me the most is I've reached out to several people who are senior White House officials, and they are watching us, Wolf. They have no information about the president's health. They have been waiting, frankly, for some of them have worked in other administrations where they're used to the doctors coming out and having a press conference. I've reached out to several senior Republicans on the Hill and at the cabinet level. They don't know what the status is of the president's health. And so I think there is a real concern that even though this is not a normal White House, that in this case, they really should be much more transparent. Wolf?
Yeah, all right. Stand by, Jamie. We're going to get back to you. You know, Gloria, there's a political fallout. We're only a month away from the presidential election here, November 3rd, here in the United States. It was significant, I thought, that the Biden campaign announced a little while ago, because the president has coronavirus, because he's now at the Bethesda Hospital, the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, they are pulling all negative ads. No more negative ads for the time being as a result of what's going on. So the political fallout, with only a month to go, the president was planning on a daily basis to go out there and campaign. There were going to be debates. Everything now is up in the air.
Right, and because nobody knows where this is going to go, Wolf. And let me echo what Jamie is saying. I reached out to a couple of Republicans who just said to me, we have no idea where any of this is going. We're close to an election. Nobody knows at this point how sick the president is. Nobody really knows how many other people inside the White House are sick or will be sick. Nobody knows what's going to happen to the vice presidential debate or the upcoming presidential debates. So this is a big question mark for everyone, Wolf, because nobody knows. There is no information. And, you know, we've been covering elections a long time, and we can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow.
We certainly can't. This is a major, major moment. Gloria, stand by as well. I want to bring in Dr. Len Schleifer, the co-founder and CEO of Regeneron. That's the company that makes the experimental antibody cocktail that is now being given to the president. Dr. Schleifer, thank you so much for joining us. We're told by the president's physician he received a single dose, the highest dose of Regeneron's new cocktail. It's experimental, hasn't even been approved for emergency use. But tell us about this cocktail. Tell us what's going on and why the president's doctors decided he needed this treatment.
Sure. Thanks, Wolf. Let me start by saying that on behalf of everybody at Regeneron, we hope that all the hard work that our people have put into developing this medicine will help make a difference and will lead to a speedy recovery. And in the president's words, everything will work out. Look, he's in a race now, and I'm not talking about the political race. He's in a race where his immune system is racing against the virus. And if the virus wins, you can have dire consequences, obviously. And what our antibodies do is we make it a fairer fight. He's in a higher risk group for a variety of reasons, such as he's being older. And if we give our antibodies, we hope that we will give his immune system enough of a boost so that he can win this and make a complete recovery. That's the strategy. We've got a lot of data, but we're still in the experimental phase. But when you're in the midst of a pandemic and you have people who are at risk, we do think it makes sense to try these in addition to our large-scale clinical trials on an individual basis, such as we did with the president.
In the statement from the president's doctor that was released, Dr. Sean Connolly, they said it was a precautionary measure that he receive a single 8-gram dose of Regeneron's polyclonal antibody cocktail. He completed the infusion without incident. That's what the statement says. Tell us about the infusion. Tell us about what was going on.
Well, I think it's really pretty straightforward. Our antibody is really a collection of monoclonal antibodies that's made in controlled laboratory and factory conditions. It gets infused through your vein and into the person's body, and then it helps that person win the race. It's not all that complicated. We're just trying to mimic the natural immune system, which isn't really ready to go when the virus is already going. And so when we looked at our data just this week, in fact, you and I were talking about it, Wolf, earlier in the week, we saw very encouraging signs. And I think they were encouraging enough to the White House physicians that they wanted to try it on what's called a compassionate use basis, which is really just an individual experimental approach that they filed with the FDA for approval. And we just provided the drug, and we really hope that it will make a difference.
Is it just one dose? Is that enough, Dr. Schleifer?
Yeah, these antibodies, it's a large enough dose so that it'll last quite a long time for him. Hopefully, even beyond when he's made a complete recovery. We have evidence already that these are long-lasting in the body, as you'd expect with this type of therapy. So a single dose, a high dose, should do the trick, and we hope that it will.
We got it from the statement from the president's physician that the First Lady Melania Trump remains well with only a mild cough and headache. Did she also get a single dose of this cocktail?
Yeah, we're not able to talk about any individual patient. We're not even allowed from a medical ethical point of view to talk about the president. We're just confirming that we did supply it. If they make a statement, whether she did or she didn't, then we can react. But as far right now, we're really just focused on what they said about the president, that he did receive this under this so-called compassionate use, and we did supply it. It's a cocktail of 2 monoclonal antibodies that work together to really glom onto that virus and effectually make it impossible for the virus to get in your cells. Well, that's how it works.
Let's hope it works. Dr. Schleifer, thanks to you. Thanks to everyone at Regeneron working on this new cocktail. Appreciate it very much. It's truly been a historic day here in the nation's capital. CNN's special coverage of this major breaking story continues right now with Aaron Burnett out front.